"You're just the placeholder until my ex gets his life together," she admitted. "So I gave her permanently. Now he's back in jail, and she's begging for a second place on my waiting list." Hey viewers, before we move on to the video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if you want to see more stories like this. Thanks. For 3 years, I built my life around Hannah. I wasn't just her boyfriend, I was her foundation. When her car died, I was the one who co-signed the loan for the new one. When her dad got sick, I was the one who drove her to the hospital every weekend, who held her while she cried, who made sure she ate. When she maxed out her credit cards, I helped her consolidate the debt and create a budget. I was the stable ground after the earthquake of her life. I thought it made me a good partner. I didn't know I was just being a good placeholder. The cracks started small, almost imperceptible. A locked photo album on her phone she'd named The Past. The way she'd sometimes get a distant look in her eyes, a sad, almost yearning smile that never seemed to be for me. I'd ask her about it, and she'd just shake her head and say, "Just memories, Alex. Don't worry about it." And I didn't, because I trusted her. I was an idiot. The real shift happened 2 weeks ago. I was cooking dinner, her favorite, chicken parmesan. When she came in, her face pale, staring at her phone. "Jake's out," she said, her voice hollow. I stopped stirring the sauce. Jake. The name was a ghost in our relationship. The ex-boyfriend from before me. The one with the charming smile and the rap sheet. The one who'd talked her into investing her savings into a scheme that landed him in jail for fraud and left her with nothing. I'd helped her pick up the pieces. "Out? As in parole?" I asked, keeping my voice carefully neutral. "As in time served. Good behavior." She finally looked at me, and her expression was unreadable. "He messaged me." A cold knot tightened in my stomach. "Han, maybe that's not a door you need to reopen. For your own sake." She flinched as if I'd slapped her. "You don't understand what we had. It was complicated. Stealing your life savings seems pretty straightforward to me," I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. Her eyes flashed with a defensive fire I hadn't seen in years. "You don't know him. You don't know what he was dealing with. He was lost, and I failed him. I failed him." The words hung in the air between us, suffocating. For 3 years, I thought I was helping her. Now, I realized, in her mind, she'd just been biding her time, waiting for a chance to fix things with him. The following days were tense. She was glued to her phone, her thumbs flying across the screen, a small, secretive smile playing on her lips. The smile I used to think was for me. She was distant during our movie nights, distracted when I talked about my day. The foundation I'd so carefully built was turning to sand under my feet. It all came to a head on a rainy Tuesday. She'd been out with the girls, but came home smelling of cheap whiskey and a bar I knew her friends hated. She was volatile, a storm looking for a place to land. I was cleaning up the kitchen, trying to give her space. "You're always so fucking tidy," she slurred, leaning against the doorway. "Everything in its place. So predictable." I put down the sponge. "I'm sorry for cleaning our home, Hannah. See? That?" She waved a hand dismissively. "That passive-aggressive nice guy shit. Just once, I wish you'd get mad. Really mad." I took a deep breath, trying to anchor myself. "I'm not going to get mad at you for being drunk. Let's just get you to bed." "I don't want to go to bed," she snapped, her voice cracking. She stumbled into the living room and collapsed on the couch, burying her face in her hands. The performance of the angry drunk was gone, replaced by a raw, desperate misery. I followed, my concern warring with a growing sense of dread. I sat on the edge of the coffee table, facing her. "Just talk to me, Han. Whatever it is, we can handle it. We always do." She looked up, her mascara smudged into dark shadows under her eyes. She laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "That's the problem. You're always so stable. So there. It's suffocating." The word hit me like a physical blow. Suffocating. All my support, all my loyalty, was just weight to her. "I'm sorry for being reliable," I said, the confusion and hurt breaking through my calm exterior. "No, you don't get it," she said, shaking her head as if I were a particularly slow child. "With you it's easy. It's safe. It's like living in a perfectly furnished, temperature-controlled room. But with Jake," she got a faraway look, that same yearning smile from her phone. "With Jake, it was real. It was fire. It was messy and painful and glorious. He saw a part of me you'll never even know exists. The room felt like it was tilting. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. Jake? The guy who drained your bank account and got arrested? That's your idea of real? Her gaze snapped back to me, and for the first time, all the masks were off. The drunkenness, the volatility, it all crystallized into a cold, terrifying clarity. I've always loved him, she said, her voice low and steady, every word a precise, calculated stab. I was just waiting for him to get his life together. She paused, letting the cruelty of the statement hang in the air, ensuring I felt its full weight. You were just a placeholder, Alex. A safe place to land until he was out. Placeholder. The word echoed in the silent room, obliterating 3 years in an instant. Every shared laugh, every quiet morning, every sacrifice I'd made, it all dissolved into nothing. I wasn't her partner. I was a seat warmer, a temporary occupant, the human equivalent of a futon. I didn't say a word. I couldn't. There was nothing left to say. The entire history of our relationship had just been rewritten, and I had been reduced to a footnote. I stood up from the coffee table. The movement felt slow, deliberate, as if I were moving through deep water. I looked at her, at the woman I thought I knew, and I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just a cold, vast, and empty silence. I turned and walked toward our bedroom. Our bedroom. The thought was a joke now. "Where are you going?" she called after me, her voice laced with a sudden, sharp anxiety. She'd expected a fight. She'd expected tears. She'd expected me to beg. My silence was the one thing she hadn't prepared for. I didn't answer. I went to the closet and pulled out my old duffel bag from the top shelf. I moved with a methodical calm I didn't recognize in myself. I packed a week's worth of clothes, my toiletries, my passport, and the small lockbox that held my important documents. I left behind everything she had ever given me. I left behind the life I had built for us. When I walked back into the living room, bag in hand, she was standing, wringing her hands. The cold confidence was gone, replaced by bewildered panic. "Where are you going?" "We need to talk about this," she demanded, her voice shrill. I stopped at the front door and finally looked at her. My expression was blank, a closed door. "No, we don't," I said, my voice quiet but absolute. "You've said everything. You've been perfectly clear. So that's it. You're just walking away? After 3 years." The entitlement in her voice was breathtaking. She had just atomized my entire world, and she was shocked I wasn't sticking around for the fallout. "You told me I was a temporary fixture," I said, my hand on the doorknob. "Consider my term served." I opened the door, the cool night air rushing in. I took one last look at her, standing in the ruins of the life I'd built for her. "Good luck with the fire, Hannah," I said. "I hope you don't get burned." I pulled the door shut behind me. The click of the lock sliding into place was the quietest, most final sound I had ever heard. The numbness held during the drive to the cheap airport hotel. It was a strange, hollow feeling, as if someone had performed an emotional lobotomy. I didn't turn on the radio. I just drove in silence. The only sound, the hum of the tires on wet asphalt and the rhythmic swipe of the wipers. Placeholder. The word had scoured me clean. There was no room for anger or grief because the very identity that would feel those things had been declared null and void. The hotel room was beige and sterile. It smelled of antiseptic and stale air. I placed my duffel bag on the luggage stand, the same deliberate movement I'd used packing it. I sat on the edge of the bed, my hands on my knees, and just breathed. I waited for the pain to hit. I waited for the crushing weight of 3 years lost, for the images of her face, for the memory of her laugh. But nothing came. It was just quiet. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Then again, and again, a flurry of notifications. I pulled it out. Her name lit up the screen, over and over. "Hannah, Alex, please. Hannah, you can't just leave like this. Hannah, we need to talk like adults. Hannah, are you really this petty? Hannah, answer me." I watched the screen light up, each message a ripple on the surface of my stillness. They weren't apologies. They were demands. Demands for my attention, for my emotion, for my energy. Demands that I participate in the drama she had created. I swiped down on the notifications, clearing them. Then I went into settings, found her number, and pressed block. The action was clinical. Final. It felt better than any angry text I could have sent. The next morning, I woke up at 6 a.m., my usual time. The silence in the hotel room was different. It wasn't empty. It was peaceful. I went for a run. I answered work emails. I found a real estate website and started looking at apartments. My life had become a simple, linear series of tasks. The chaos of Hannah was a distant country I had permanently emigrated from. A week later, I met with a lawyer, a brisk, efficient woman named Ms. Davies. I explained the situation in simple, unemotional terms. We cohabitate for 3 years. We have a shared lease, a shared car loan for which I am the co-signer, and some shared utilities. I want to sever all financial and legal ties as cleanly and quickly as possible. Ms. Davies nodded, typing notes. And the reason for the separation? I looked out the window of her high-rise office. The city looked clean and orderly from up here. She informed me that our entire relationship was a temporary arrangement for her until her previous partner was available again. Ms. Davies stopped typing and looked at me over her glasses. I see. She didn't offer sympathy. She just gave a short, sharp nod. That simplifies things emotionally, if not legally. We'll send a formal notice of intent to vacate the lease, and we'll file the paperwork to have you removed from the loan. It will require her to refinance solely in her name. Good, I said. It was the first time I'd felt something akin to satisfaction. I wasn't trying to punish her. I was simply and systematically removing myself as her safety net. I went to the apartment on a Tuesday afternoon, knowing she would be at work. I'd arranged for the super to let me in. Walking in was like stepping onto a stage after the play had ended. It looked the same, but it felt completely dead. I didn't linger. I went straight to what was left of my things, my books, my desktop computer, the good set of knives my grandfather had left me. I loaded them into cardboard boxes I'd brought. I paused by a framed photo on the bookshelf. It was us, on a hiking trip, smiling, wind in our hair. I looked at my own face, at the genuine, unguarded happiness in my eyes. I felt nothing for that man but a distant pity. He didn't know he was living on borrowed time. I left the photo on the shelf. It belonged to the placeholder. As I was carrying the last box out, my phone rang. It was Mark, one of our mutual friends. I almost didn't answer. But Mark was a decent guy. Alex, hey man, he said, his voice strained. She's a mess. She said you just vanished? What's going on? I put the box down in the hallway and closed the apartment door for the last time. She told me, verbatim, that I was just a placeholder until her ex-con boyfriend got out of jail, Mark. She said our entire relationship was a lie. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Oh, Mark finally said. Shit. She told me you two had a fight. She didn't. Wow. Yeah. Wow, I said, my voice flat. So, I'm not vanishing. I'm exiting a situation that was built on a false premise. I'd appreciate it if you didn't give her this number. Of course, man. Of course. Jesus, the placeholder? I'm sorry, Alex. Don't be, I said, and I meant it. It was the most clarifying thing she's ever said to me. I hung up and picked up my box. The chapter was closed. The next 2 months were a lesson in quiet reconstruction. I found a small, bright apartment on the other side of the city. It had big windows and no memories. I bought furniture piece by piece, choosing only what I liked. I started going to the gym not as a distraction, but as a purpose. The physical transformation was slow, but the mental one was rapid. The fog of Hannah's drama cleared, and I could see my own life with startling clarity. I was happier, genuinely, undeniably happier in my sterile, quiet apartment than I had been in years. The news of Hannah's unraveling reached me in fragments, like pieces of a shipwreck washing up on my distant, peaceful shore. It started with a text from an unknown number a month in. Unknown. Hey Alex, it's Stacy. Look, I know Hannah messed up, but Jake is a total loser. He moved in like a week after you left, and he's not even looking for a job. She's miserable. I deleted it and blocked the number. Then, a brief, awkward call from Mike, another friend from the old group. Hey man, just so you know, things are not good over there. Jake's a piece of work. Real possessive type. They had a screaming match in the parking lot of the Grove last weekend. Cops were almost called. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, the phrase utterly empty of meaning. It was a social autopilot response. Yeah, anyway. We're all getting kinda sick of his drama. Take care, Alex. Click. The final, most satisfying piece of karma came via a Google alert I'd set up long ago, back when I was helping Hannah with her case against him. I'd forgotten about it. The email popped up in my inbox with the subject, New Result for Jake Morrow. I clicked it. It was a local news brief from the police blotter. Asterisk, arrested on charges of violating parole and attempted burglary. Jake Morrow, 31, was taken into custody after a failed break-in at a construction site on Elm Avenue. A female accomplice, identified as Hannah R., was questioned and released pending further investigation. Police seized items from their shared residence. Asterisk, I leaned back in my chair. So, the fire she'd chosen over my suffocating stability had burned her, just as I'd coldly predicted. Jake was back where he belonged, and Hannah had been dragged down with him, questioned and released. I could only imagine the humiliation. The police in her apartment, seizing things. The neighbors watching. The perfect, dramatic end to her tragic romance. My phone vibrated, pulling me from the thought. It was her. Again. From another new number. This time, it was a voicemail. I almost deleted it, but a detached sense of curiosity made me press play. Her voice was a ragged, hysterical shriek, stripped of all its former calculated charm. I can't believe you. I am in real trouble here. My life is falling apart, and you're just sitting there, feeling smug. Jake's back in jail. The police took my laptop. My landlord is threatening to evict me. I admit I messed up, but you're supposed to be the better person. You're supposed to help. Call me back. The message ended. I stared at the phone. There it was. The unvarnished truth of her character. Not an apology for the 3-year con she'd pulled on me. Not a shred of self-awareness. Just a furious, screaming demand that I, the man she had called a placeholder, fix the consequences of her own choices. She still saw me as a function, a tool. The better person was just another role she expected me to play for her benefit. I deleted the voicemail. Then I blocked the new number. I looked around my new apartment. The evening sun was streaming through the big windows, illuminating the clean, sparse space. It was quiet. It was mine. I felt nothing for Hannah but a faint, anthropological interest. Her desperation was just noise. The silence in my new life was my own. And it was golden. The silence after her screaming voicemail was a victory. It was the sound of a door not just closed, but bricked over. I had built a new life, a fortress of calm, and her chaos was now outside the walls, barely a whisper on the wind. But Hannah had never been good at respecting boundaries. The attempts began again, each one a more transparent and pathetic grasp at the lever of my guilt. The first was an email. It landed in my promotions folder, its subject line a masterclass in manipulation. I'm broken. Alex, I know you hate me. I know I don't deserve your kindness. But I'm so lost. Jake is gone, probably for years. The landlord is evicting me because of the police thing. I have nowhere to go. I'm staying in a motel that smells like bleach and failure, and I can't stop thinking about how I threw away the only good thing I ever had. You were never just a placeholder. I was scared and I said a terrible, stupid thing to push you away because I didn't feel worthy of you. The truth is, I've always loved you. I was just too broken to see it. Please, can you just meet me? I need to see your face. I need to know there's still some good left in the world. Yours, always, Hannah. I read it once. Then I selected the email and clicked the trash icon. It wasn't even a difficult decision. The letter was a tapestry of lies, woven from self-pity. I didn't feel worthy. She had felt perfectly worthy when she was using my credit card. I've always loved you. The ghost of Jake would beg to differ. She wasn't reaching out to me. She was reaching out to the stability I represented, the safety net she now found herself desperately needing. A week later, my phone rang with a number from our old area code. I let it go to voicemail. An hour later, a message appeared. It was from her friend, Stacy, the flying monkey. I listened, my expression blank. Alex, it's Stacy. Look, I get it, you're hurt. But Hannah is literally destroying herself. She's lost everything. That animal Jake left her with nothing but a court date and a broken spirit. You were always the good one, the responsible one. You can't just abandon her now. She has no one. It's cruel. I sighed. The guilt trip was so predictable. I called back. Stacy picked up on the first ring, her voice breathless with self-righteous hope. Alex? Oh, thank God. Stacy. I interrupted, my voice calm and level. She told me our entire relationship was a lie. Abandoning her implies I had a responsibility to stay. I didn't. But she's learned her lesson. Stacy pleaded, her tone turning sharp. She's been punished enough, don't you think? So you're going to be a petty asshole about it and let her be homeless. I didn't rise to the bait. I'm not being petty. I'm being absent. There's a difference. Don't call this number again. I hung up, to click a period at the end of that sentence. I blocked her number. The circle of people I had to shield myself from was small, and it was getting smaller. Then came the nuclear option. It was a Saturday morning. I was making coffee, the sun streaming into my new kitchen. My work phone, the number of which I'd been forced to change after her previous voicemail, buzzed on the counter. Unknown number. A cold dread settled in my stomach. I answered, bracing for a client crisis. The voice that came through was hers, but it was stripped raw, a weaponized sob. Alex? It's me. Please, don't hang up. I'm at the hospital. I said nothing. The silence stretched, forcing her to fill it. I took something. Not enough, I guess. I just couldn't see a way out. They're keeping me for psych evaluation. She took a shaky, theatrical breath. The nurse said I should call someone who cares about me. You're the only one I could think of. The manipulation was so blatant, so grotesque, it was almost impressive. She wasn't asking for help. She was laying a trap. If I showed concern, she'd have her hook back in. If I didn't, she could paint me as the monster who hung up on a suicidal woman. My voice was cold, professional, devoid of any emotion. Are you safe with the medical staff? What? Yes, but then you're where you need to be. My presence would be counter-therapeutic for both of us. I hope you get the help you need, Hannah. Goodbye. I hung up. My hand was steady. There was no guilt. Only a profound, weary disgust. She had tried to use the ultimate emotional currency, and I had declined the transaction. I blocked that number, too. It was the last number she would ever have to me. 6 months passed. The seasons changed. My new life wasn't just a reaction to the old one anymore. It was simply my life, and it was a good one. I'd been dating Clara for 4 months. She was a landscape architect, a woman with calm eyes and an easy laugh who valued her independence as much as I valued mine. We were a partnership, not a rescue mission. We were at a bustling, sun-drenched brunch place, sharing a plate of pancakes and talking about a trip we were planning to take. I was relaxed, happy, fully present in a way I never was with Hannah. I felt a hand on my shoulder, a familiar, possessive grip that made my spine go rigid. I looked up. It was her. Hannah looked aged. Not older, but worn, like a coin that had been passed through too many hands. Her clothes were cheap, her hair lacked its former shine, and there was a frantic, hungry look in her eyes that scanned me. Then Clara, then our food, our happiness, our peace. Alex, we need to talk. Now. She completely ignored Clara, treating her as an inconvenient piece of furniture. Clara looked at me, a question in her eyes. I gave a slight, almost imperceptible shake of my head and a look that said, I'll handle this. I turned back to Hannah, my posture not defensive, but open, as if a mildly bothersome stranger had approached our table. Hannah, this isn't a good time, I said, my voice polite but distant. Her composure, already brittle, cracked. It's never a good time for you anymore. My life is ruined. Jake's in for 5 years, I lost the apartment. I'm waiting tables at a diner. I have nothing. She was waiting for a reaction, shock, pity, anything. I gave her nothing. I'm aware, I said, my tone flat, as if she'd told me the weather was poor. I heard. The indifference was a slap. Her eyes widened, brimming with furious, disbelieving tears. And you don't care? After everything we had, this was the moment. The power reversal was complete. I was no longer the placeholder. I was the king in his castle, and she was the beggar at the gate. I turned slightly to Clara, my demeanor softening instantly. Clara, this is Hannah. Hannah, this is Clara. The introduction was deliberate, polite, and utterly devastating. It formally acknowledged her existence, while simultaneously demonstrating her absolute irrelevance to my current world. Hannah stared, her jaw slack. She looked between us, at our joined hands on the table, at the simple intimacy of the scene. So this is it, she whispered, her voice trembling with a fresh wave of outrage. You replace me just like that? I turned my gaze back to her, and I gave her the full, unvarnished truth. It wasn't delivered with anger or malice, but with the calm finality of a judge reading a verdict. I didn't replace you, Hannah, I said, my voice clear and carrying. A placeholder is temporary by definition. When my permanent situation became available, I glanced at Clara, a genuine, unforced smile touching my lips for a fraction of a second before returning my gaze to Hannah. I simply stopped filling the temporary role. I let the words hang in the air, watching them land, watching them shatter the last of her delusions. Our business concluded the day you explained my function to me. I concluded, my tone shifting to one of mild, dismissive suggestion. I suggest you focus on your own situation now. And with that, I turned my back on her. Literally, I shifted my body fully towards Clara, picked up my coffee cup, and took a sip. So, as I was saying, I think late September would be perfect for the mountains. The silence I left Hannah with was more absolute than any slamming door. I was no longer just ignoring her calls. I was ignoring her physical presence. She was a ghost, and I had stopped believing in her. After a moment that must have felt like an eternity, I heard a choked, guttural sound, and then the frantic click-clack of her heels retreating across the tile floor. I didn't watch her go. I didn't need to. Clara reached over and squeezed my hand, her touch warm and real. "You okay?" she asked softly. I looked at her, at the sunlight in her hair, at the future in her eyes, and I felt the last vestige of that cold, hollow place inside me fill with a quiet, steady warmth. "Never better," I said, and for the first time since I'd heard the word placeholder, I knew it was the absolute truth. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. What do you think about this story? Share it in the comments.